The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
When it comes to Los Angeles or other cities, if we see other cities are gearing up, and these people are agitators, they're paid, they're professionals.
Promoting protests, the growing anti-ICE movement responds now the center of a new court case.
The water's deep and the water's moving real fast. You're taking your life into your own hands. 4
people killed and several now missing following extreme flooding in Texas. The urgent search as more rain moves in. And then wholesale inflation ticks up in May. Why the president says the report is good and what he wants to happen next to save the country money. This is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, I'm Titi Gatton. Thank you for being here. And we begin with that breaking news right now, a hearing taking place in federal court on whether or not President Donald Trump can use the California National Guard as well as the Marines on the streets of L.A. as protests continue. The president has repeatedly said that without the Guard's presence since this weekend, Los Angeles would be in flames. California Governor Gavin Newsom says the president needs his permission to call the Guard, and that request was never made. Appearing before Congress for a third straight day, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth wouldn't say today if the president would follow the ruling before the Supreme Court got involved.
Can you assure the American people on 2 things? You will respect any Supreme Court decision on this matter about whether the Marines are constitutional, and you will respect the district courts when they rule before the Supreme Court rules.
What I can say is we should not have local judges determining foreign policy or national security policy for the country.
So you're not willing to say you would respect those decisions?
What I'm saying is local district judges shouldn't make foreign policy for the United States.
80 people were arrested last night in L.A. while similar anti-ICE protests continue around the country. In Seattle, 8 people were arrested overnight as the federal building was vandalized and a dumpster was lit on fire, and at least 1 set of fireworks was thrown at police officers during a demonstration. There were no injuries reported. In Las Vegas, police used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse crowds out after that 9 p.m. curfew passed. Multiple people were arrested for not leaving the area. While in New York, NYPD foiled a near disaster when they found undetonated explosives underneath police cars in a Brooklyn parking lot. Authorities saw 2 masked men on surveillance video. No arrests were made. And as these protests continue across the country, there are questions growing over whether or not this is a paid and an organized movement. The Los Angeles chief of police says the peaceful protesters during the day are certainly not the same element he sees when the sun goes down.
Once nightfall comes, we start to see a different group of people, and among those people are people I would describe as black bloc type protesters, anarchists, if you will, and they come prepared, and they're very sophisticated. They do have radio communications. They do move around. They do monitor police channels, and they'll create distractions in order to draw us away from a scene we're about to make arrests, so where we have no choice but to go somewhere else.
President Trump said again today he believes the rioters are paid, but he doesn't know by whom. He isn't the only one who believes that to be true. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joins us with more from Washington.
Republicans arguing there are powerful puppet masters fueling the anti-ICE riots rocking Los Angeles.
These people are agitators, they're paid. They're professionals.
And they want to know who they are.
These aren't spontaneous at all. They're about as authentic as AstroTurf.
Senator Josh Hawley launching an investigation this week into the riots, sending a letter to Angelica Salas.
We are here, united in community.
The leader of the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, CHIRLA for short. CHIRLA is a taxpayer-funded immigration activist organization with ties to the Democratic Party. According to the government transparency group Open the Books, CHIRLA received $35 million from the state of California.
It has gotten out of hand, and this is in part due to funding from taxpayers that state funds have been given to these organizations that are encouraging rioters.
Hawley's letter claims credible reporting suggests they've provided logistical support and financial resources to individuals engaged in these disruptive actions. Hawley adding, bankrolling civil unrest is not protected speech. Churla denies such involvement in the riots. As for funding sources from the private sector side, House Oversight Committee now calling on China-based billionaire Neville Singham to testify.
Singham coordinated the anti-ICE LA protest. Again, this picture just can't be shown enough.
Lawmakers aiming to dig into his ties to the Chinese Communist Party and his funding of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which has ties to the LA riots, the protests at Columbia University, and the murder of the 2 Israeli embassy staffers in D.C.
And Didi, as Congress conducts their investigations, President Trump also tasking Attorney General Pam Bondi and the Justice Department to hold those individuals accountable for their illegal actions that were related to these riots.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem in Los Angeles. She has representatives from the IRS with her. Tell us why the IRS is involved.
Well, Didi, Noem said in her press conference this afternoon, the IRS is there to follow the money and shed light on how the violence specifically is funded. The IRS is looking at NGOs, union and private individuals. The ones I mentioned earlier are likely on that list. Noem says they believe most of the people who came out wanted to protest and demonstrate peacefully and lawfully. They want to find out who instigated the trouble and who funded them to do so. This is the same press conference, Didi, that California Senator Alex Padilla was forcibly removed from.
Live from Washington, D.C., Kayla Gaskins, thank you. Blue states' immigration policies are under the microscope in Congress with a high-profile hearing featuring Democrat governors defending their choices to limit cooperation with the federal government. The National News Desk, Matt Gelka, reports from Washington.
House Republicans teed off on so-called sanctuary state governors from blue states, including Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, New York's Kathy Hochul, and Minnesota's Tim Walz over their state's immigration policies.
You're calling ICE agents modern-day Nazis. Given the attacks on ICE agents that took place in Los Angeles over the weekend, don't you regard your dangerous, inflammatory rhetoric as a problem?
The questions do you want me to answer first?
So, sir, it saddens me that you refuse to express regret.
Republicans took turns citing immigrant-related crimes in the states where they said the governors didn't do enough to prevent them from happening.
He found a sleeping woman on the subway, lit her on fire, and burned her alive. This is in Kathy Hochul's New York. And as I'm sure you are aware, and I'll remind you, that ICE issued an order to detain this violent criminal, but that was rejected by New York officials due to sanctuary state laws. Now, do you know who Raymond Rojas Basilio is?
I just want to say this. These crimes are horrific.
Because of your sanctuary state policies.
The hearing going on while another blue state, California, is in the national spotlight after anti-ICE protests turned violent over the weekend. The governors defended their state policies while slamming the Trump administration's decision to send military backup to California, while state leaders there rejected it.
Enforcing immigration law is not the role of local and state governments. It's the federal government's job to secure the border.
It's wrong to deploy the National Guard and active duty Marines into an American city over the objection of local law enforcement, just to inflame a situation and create a crisis.
Earlier this year, a federal judge blocked the Trump administration's attempt to withhold federal funding from sanctuary cities and counties. A similar attempt was made during the president's first term. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
We officially rescue the U.S. auto industry from destruction by terminating the California electric vehicle mandate once and for all.
President Donald Trump signed legislation today ending California's phase-out of gas-powered cars by 2035 before it got started. The president says people can buy electric cars, but they shouldn't be forced to. California says the resolution is illegal, and it will sue the federal government. The House just voted to approve $9.4 billion in federal budget cuts requested by President Trump. They will impact public media like NPR and PBS, refugee assistance, and global health programs. Republicans say the money was being wasted, but Democrats call the cuts inhumane. They'll need a simple majority in the Senate to pass. Republicans say if that happens, they'll want more cuts. The lone survivor of the deadly Air India plane crash is doing fine. The family of Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, a British man of Indian origin, spoke to him from the hospital. We do want to warn you, the following video is graphic. A doctor told CNN Ramesh could be released within a couple of days. Sky News reports he was sitting in seat 11A and his brother was in seat 11J. The other 241 passengers were killed in the crash, along with at least 49 people on the ground, according to police.
This is a difficult day for all of us at Air India, and our efforts now are focused entirely on the needs of our passengers, crew members, their families, and loved ones.
The people on board the Boeing 787 Dreamliner were from India, Britain, Portugal, and Canada. Indian aviation officials say the flight gave a mayday call shortly after takeoff. Air India's CEO says investigations will take time. And here are some images of a JetBlue airliner that rolled off the runway at Boston's Logan International Airport and onto the grass. The flight was landing in Boston from Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Massachusetts Port Authority says thankfully no one was hurt. The FAA is investigating. The disturbing sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs continued today. Combs' ex-girlfriend, Jane, wrapped up her testimony after cross-examination and redirect questioning. She is one of 3 key witnesses and started her testimony last Thursday with direct examination. Prosecutors are expected to rest their case sometime next week. Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges. And the third and final count against Harvey Weinstein has ended in a hung jury. The judge declared a mistrial after the jury foreman refused to return to deliberate today, saying he felt bullied by another juror. Yesterday, the same jury convicted Weinstein of 1 sex crime act while acquitting on another. Weinstein denies all the charges. The case of an Atlanta family whose home the FBI wrongfully raided can continue. Today, the Supreme Court ruled to revive the lawsuit after lower courts tossed it out. Trina Martin and Toy Cleat sued the federal government after an FBI SWAT team broke into their home in 2017, then realized it was the wrong house. Martin said she was ecstatic about the decision. Coming up, China's comments today about the trade deal President Trump announced, plus the new tariff threat Trump is now making. And later, new polling showing Republicans have completely closed the gap among a crucial voting bloc that has backed Democrats for decades. Later, why an invitation to participate in a Baltimore Orioles honor guard ceremony was turned down by a sheriff's office. We'll be right back. At least 4 people are dead and several others are missing in floodwaters in San Antonio, according to police. The area has been inundated with torrential rains. Multiple cars were completely submerged. Rescue crews have conducted at least 65 water rescues, several road closures in effect as searches continue. The National News Desk, Cristina De Leon, has more.
Here at the scene, 7 cars were found upside down, right side up, and sadly, with one body still inside. It was a very emotional scene as family members wanted closure from loved ones. Police had to escort this man away from trying to find his fiancée down below. He still has not heard from her. The floodwaters swept away so many cars into this creek near Perrin Bidle and Austin Highway on the northeast side of town around 5 o'clock this morning. Firefighters tell us that in all, 13 cars and trucks were found. 4 people died, 2 men and 2 women, and the search continues for more. 4 were treated at the scene and taken to nearby hospitals. The San Antonio police chief talking to us about just how dangerous it is navigating through this weather, especially when the rain came down so hard and so fast.
The depth of the water and the speed at which it's traveling are very, very hard to gauge. And if you venture into it when the water's deep and the water's moving real fast, you're taking your life into your own hands. And I mentioned earlier also that little saying, turn around, don't drown, is one that we should really heed when we've got waters rushing.
Now, 2 people managed to make it out of their cars safely and get back home and to their loved ones. But the floodwaters swept so many people away. Not everyone was so lucky. On the northeast side of town in San Antonio, I'm Cristina De Leon. We will send it back to you.
China is making clear that the trade agreement with the U.S. is not a done deal. Today, a spokesperson for China said this week's negotiations were the first meeting and the outcome was just a framework. Trump said yesterday the U.S. would get magnets and rare earth minerals from China, and Chinese students could study at U.S. colleges. The U.S. would get 55% tariffs, and China would get 10%. President Trump is threatening unilateral take-it-or-leave-it tariffs on trading partners. He said it last night at the Kennedy Center, sending stocks lower this morning. Trump said the U.S. can't hold trade negotiations with 150-plus countries. So in 2 weeks, his administration will just start sending letters out. He said negotiations are ongoing with 15 countries. Wholesale prices rose in May, although less than economists expected. The Labor Department said their producer price index was up 0.1% from April to May after dropping 0.2 the month before. The relatively calm numbers led the president to say inflation was flat. He now calls on Jerome Powell and the Fed to reduce rates, which could lead to big savings on the U.S.'s national debt.
If we cut our interest by 1 point for years, we save $300 billion. If we cut it by 2 points, we save, because it's pretty equivalent. We're going to spend $600 billion a year, $600 billion.
The 6th round of nuclear talks between the United States and Iran, mediated by Oman, set for Sunday. Last night, it was unclear if the meeting would happen as the U.S. moved none of the essential personnel out of the Middle East, citing security concerns. Iran threatened U.S. bases if they were to be attacked. President Trump talked about where he stands on the negotiations.
Well, I'd love to avoid the conflict. Iran's going to have to negotiate a little bit tougher, meaning they're going to have to give us some things that they're not willing to give us. But we've had very good discussions with Iran. Whether or not we get there, I can't tell you, but it'll happen soon.
U.S. intelligence sources say Israel is ready to launch an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities and could do so without the U.S.'s assistance. President Trump again today says he is not in favor of that happening unless the negotiations fail. Complicating things even further, the UN's International Atomic Energy Agency board says Iran to be in violation of their non-proliferation obligations. Iran says this declaration complicates their talks with the U.S., and they have opened a new uranium enrichment facility. President Trump says he wants Iran to have 0% enrichment to reach a deal. Beginning today, the DNC is holding the first part of their revote for their 2 vice chairs of the committee. The virtual vote for male candidates is open until Saturday. Then beginning Sunday through Tuesday, the DNC will hold a vote not tied to the gender. Former DNC Vice Chair David Hogg says he is withdrawing from consideration to focus on other ways to help the party. Meantime, some new polling shows a major political shift to the right. The National News Desk, Angela Brown, is breaking down the numbers.
Democrats in free fall with middle-class voters.
2016, a 17-point advantage. But by this decade, we already started seeing declines back in 2022, where you saw that Democrats led, but only by 4 points, well within the margin of error. And now in our latest CNN poll among registered voters, which is the party of the middle class, it is tied.
Republicans calling it the Trump effect, and some political scientists agree, saying Trump recaptured the white working class and surprisingly made inroads with some minority communities.
The working class whites continue to have a major say in who would win in those battleground states. And that was one of the things that really hurt Kamala Harris, is that she just was not able to connect with enough of them.
But it's not all rosy for Republicans. A brand new Quinnipiac poll found 53% of registered voters oppose the big, beautiful bill. So who's getting the blame? Not the bill. Republican Vivek Ramaswamy blames the media.
I think the reality is the media distortion filter, particularly aided by their animosity from much of the left-wing media to President Trump's agenda, distorts much of what the public thinks right now.
And while Trump is betting on the big, beautiful bill,
one big, beautiful bill, which is moving along very nicely with great support.
Democratic voters may be banking on change, especially at the local level. So far, 2025, a roller coaster for progressives. In Pittsburgh, Mayor Ed Gainey, the city's first black mayor and seen as a rising progressive star, was just defeated by a moderate Corey O'Connor in the primary. And political reporting efforts by progressives in California to enact single-payer health care have stalled out. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Coming up, the help North Carolina residents say they still need 9 months after the devastation of Hurricane Helene. We're back in 90 seconds. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America. And we start in California with an anti-Trump protest.
There were a lot of drivers honking their horns more than usual Wednesday near Highway 41 and Shaw and Fresno during rush hours. Drivers responding to a sign that read "Honk for Democracy" placed on the highway overpass. Next to it, a large banner that read "No Kings." Chris Whipburn, who organized the demonstration, is a part of a group called Central Valley Indivisible, aiming to fight for, quote, real democracy of, by, and for the people.
Nobody's coming to save us. We have to do this ourselves. So show up. Let's have a huge crowd.
It's the life-or-death situation April Blair and others along the Rocky Broad River in Batcave faced in September.
Blake just told us that the dam's fixing to break. We're fixing to lose everything.
Homes were washed away along with belongings. Initially, volunteers rushed in. But more than 8 months later, time has led to new frustrations.
We need help, and that debris sat there for over 6.5 months right there on the road. And as you see behind me, there's debris everywhere.
Others questioned why nonprofits, including Samaritan's Purse, the Fuller Center, or Baptist on Mission appear absent in the gorge. I reached out to these agencies, which said it comes down to logistics and accessibility. Samaritan's Purse and Baptist on Mission do have some projects in Henderson County and are adding more.
The Carroll County Sheriff's Office in Maryland has declined an invitation to participate in an honor guard ceremony at Camden Yards because of the Baltimore Orioles policy prohibiting firearms in the ballpark. The sheriff said he canceled his deputies' participation because the Orioles would not allow them to carry their guns during the event.
First of all, our policy is that when you're in a uniform, you have a loaded firearm with you. And so regardless of where we go, deputies, law enforcement, we're targets the second we leave our houses in a uniform. And people expect us to be able to take action.
In response, the Orioles said the safety of their fans is of the utmost importance. Coming up, the countdown is on for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. What makes this one special? We'll explain right after the break. The countdown is on for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which will be the first to feature 48 teams. Mexico unveiled the countdown clock yesterday, marking exactly 1 year from the start date. Countdown clocks were unveiled across the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. 16 cities will host the World Cup, including Toronto, Dallas, and Seattle. 13 teams have already booked their place in the big game. 35 more teams are set to join. The emergency hearing in California pitting Governor Gavin Newsom against President Trump over the use of the National Guard has ended. There has been no ruling as of yet. Join us again tonight, though, as we break down all of the latest developments. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tonight at 10.